What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Today we are talking about Game Week 3 wildcards. So last week I did a rating your wildcard draft video, which I'm probably going to do again tomorrow. So make sure you follow me on Twitter if you don't already. Wait for my tweet and then reply to that with your wildcard drafts, and I'll go through some of them tomorrow. But in this one, I'm going through a draft that I've put together. I've not hit the button, but so many people have out there that I wanted to put together what I would be thinking about if I was wildcarding this week. So if you like the video, please do give it a like, hit subscribe for new around here, and let's talk about Fan Team. So for anyone that hasn't got involved, like I said last week, there is still a little bit of time. There's a catch-up system where you can start on 89 points, which is worked out by 70% of the average points scored for Game Week 1 and Game Week 2. To put that into perspective, I've scored 138 points in the first 2 weeks, so you'd be just under 40 points behind, but you've got unlimited transfers to put together the perfect kind of wildcard team. And I don't have the luxury of doing that. I've got to stick with my team, use my wildcard if I want to, or make some transfers as well. So there's a good bit of catch up there, and there's €1 million worth of prizes, and guaranteed, by the way, including €200,000 for first place. So if you want to check it out, there's a handy link in the description below. That's my sign up link. Make sure you use that. It is gambling, 18 plus, begambleaware.org. There's a link for that in the description below as well. Enjoy, good luck building your team, and good luck with catching up as well. So before we jump into the draft itself, there's a couple of points that I wanted to talk about. Different player costs. Obviously, when you had a player in your team, will depend on how much you have to pay for them. So for example, I've had Sice and Calvert-Lewin since my Game Week 1 team, so I'm not having to pay quite as much for them. But for Reece James, I'm having to pay 0.1 extra. But obviously, if you already had him in, you won't. So some people won't be able to make this exact team or have exact same amount of money in the bank at this stage, and that's going to be the same throughout the season. In this particular draft that I've put together, and I do have an alternate one at the end as well, but in the main one I'm going to be talking about, I've got 0.6 million in the bank. And the last thing I want to say, it's very difficult, I'm finding, to wildcard this week. I haven't hit the button because I'm pretty happy with my team. There's just a few players in my team that maybe in a couple of weeks I will get rid of, but right now I don't really want to do that. So it's hard to wildcard because you know long term you might not want those players, but you have to kind of have them in right now. So I'm going to talk about that as I go and talk about different players that you could put in certain places, and also different formations you could go for as well. So let's start off with the defence. So this is the defence that I've come up with. Now, I don't want to keep saying or keep caveating that we're only 2 weeks in, so we've only got limited data, but that is a big issue this week, right? So for example, McCarthy, not done well at all in the first 2 games. I can see why people are thinking about getting rid. But he actually has Burnley away and West Brom at home next 2 games. What if he got 1 or 2 clean sheets in those fixtures? Suddenly he's 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4 clean sheets, and people thinking, well, actually, maybe I could keep him for the easier fixtures. But obviously, if you're wildcarding now, you've got to make a decision. And jumping off McCarthy might not be the worst call. I still think Meslier at Leeds could be worth a look. But right now, obviously, the big combo is Martinez and Steer at Aston Villa. That will probably not be the 1 and 2 when Heaton is finally fit and be able to get back into that team. I'm sure Martinez will still be the number 1 at that point. I don't think he would have done anything wrong to lose his place. But Heaton will probably be the backup keeper, and he is not 4 million. But right now, that's kind of the standard goalkeeper choice. I've still not seen enough to say that I'd want to go to a £5 million goalkeeper like Ramsdale, not interested. Pickford, I like the Everton defence, but he keeps making too many mistakes, so he would be a little bit of a worry for me as well. So ultimately, I would stick with a 4.5. Now, for this particular draft, I've gone 4-4-2, and I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, because I know there's a lot of strikers that people want, but when you start trying to fit in certain players, it's very hard to fit in the likes of Werner and Jesus and Jimenez without making sacrifices elsewhere. And obviously, if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But in this particular draft, I haven't. So let's talk about the players in here. I still think it's probably worth going for Mitchell. I know I talked a lot about Ferguson pre-season. I did kind of say if you needed someone to play in the opening game weeks, Mitchell was probably the better bet. And when Ferguson's back, hopefully he'll be first choice. But at this point, we don't know when he's going to be back. So I'd probably stick with Mitchell. And he has played really well as well. I've been quite impressed. Whether he keeps his place when Van Aanholt is back, it still seems very unlikely. Van Aanholt could play further forward, but if they're going to play someone like Batshuayi through the middle, Zaha and Eze on the wings, there's not really a place in midfield for Van Aanholt. And as good as Mitchell's been, as good as he might be in the future, I just don't see how Van Aanholt doesn't get straight back into that team. So Mitchell's still probably a short-term pick, but he is 4 million, so it's probably worth it still. In the back line, I feel like Reece James right now looks like he could be one of the best value players in the game. They've signed Mendy now, a goalkeeper, to replace Kepa. I've said millions of times before, their underlying numbers were really good last year. Yes, they conceded a lot of goals, but a lot of that was down to Kepa. So hopefully the back line will now have a bit more confidence with a new goalkeeper in there. The only thing that slightly worries me with Reece James is still that thing in the back of my mind that Azpilicueta could start at some point. And that probably will happen, right? Azpilicueta is not going to go from playing nearly every single minute when fit to just not playing at all in the league. So it could happen. But it does look right now, 2 starts in a row for Reece James. Azpilicueta played in the Cup as well. Maybe that was to get his minutes up and get a bit of fitness. But I think it just looks like Reece James is first choice right back right now. And so he has to be in for 5.1 million. New goalkeeper, good fixtures coming up, attacking threat as well. It's too difficult to not go with him, basically. For me, like for my actual team, I'm probably not going to bring him in this week. I'm going to give him one more week and see again. If he starts again, then I'll probably bring him in game week 4. And at that point, look, if Azpilicueta comes in, fair enough. But right now, he does look like first choice. So he has to be in. And I still think Wolves' defence is a decent bet. 5 million or 5.1 million now for Sice. But like I said, I've had him in since the start. We still don't know, at the time of recording this, how much Semedo will be. I'm almost certain it'll be 5.5 million. People hoping for 5 million. It's just not going to happen, I don't think. So 5.5 million could be a good bet. And I still like the idea of going for double Wolves defence. Like, again, we've not got much info from this season. So we have to look at last season. They were very good defensively. And I don't see why that would change. They use a very rigid system that the players know in and out. Whether they come into the team or not, it's a system that's drilled into everyone. I think Semedo at 5.5 could be good. If you just have him 1, I'd still probably just go for Sice and save the money. But if you're looking at 2, Sice and Semedo could be the way to go. Especially if, like, Semedo's numbers last year weren't quite as good as Doherty in terms of expected goals, expected assists. But they weren't awful. And also, one of the things for Doherty was that he's playing in a system that lets him bomb forward, and this could happen for Semedo as well. So he's definitely one to watch. I've gone for double Liverpool defence in this particular scenario. You could go for, as I'll talk about in an alternate draft, you could go for Lamptey instead of Robertson or Lamptey instead of Trent and use that money up front instead. But I do like the Liverpool defence. I think Thiago coming in when he's a regular starter, which I'm sure he will be, I think that just makes the defence even better. I've seen some people say that maybe he'll become more of the creative outlet and progress the ball, and they might not need the players like Trent to do that as much. So maybe they won't be as involved, but I just think it's too early to say that. And we know they're going to get plenty of clean sheets as well. So I do like the double up. I think Arsenal at home is a decent enough fixture. And the ones they got coming up are really good as well. So I like that. We all know that they're going to probably score just as well as £7 million forwards and midfielders. You could go for 4.5 instead and put that money up front. I'll talk about that a bit later. But I quite like the Liverpool double up. I've already got one of them. I would have had Robertson in if it was easier to do at the time. Obviously on a wildcard it's a bit easier to shuffle around, but there are good value options for like kind of 5, 4.5 as well. So no harm if you want to just go with one Liverpool defender. So midfield time, it is 4-4-2, so I've still got a 4.5 million bench option. I like Souček still. I think he will score a few goals over the coming weeks, but I just still don't want to stretch up to that 5 million for a player that I'm not going to pick that often. Anguissa did start last week for Fulham. And interesting, I did a video on Fantasy Football Scout pre-season for Fulham. And Dara, who was on the video, he basically said once Lamina or Anguissa gets their place, they'll probably be the one that goes forward a little bit more than Reed. Obviously, Reed at Fulham is going to play, but he's not very attacking. Not to say that Anguissa or Lamina are going to suddenly start getting loads of points, but out of all the 4.5 millions, along with maybe Basuma, they're probably the ones you've got the most chance of getting something from. It's still going to be few and far between, but it could happen. So Anguissa an option, but it's not to say that he's absolutely nailed on now. So it could be a little bit of a risk in that regard. And because it's 4-4-2, you might want to go for someone who's guaranteed to get you at least a couple of points if you need to call upon them. Kevin De Bruyne I already talked about in my team selection video. 100% in my team now. Not to say that Sterling's a bad option at all, but just when you factor in penalties with De Bruyne, I just cannot look past him. So he's in, and Salah's in as well. Now, a lot of people are going to consider going without Salah, and I can see why. Obviously, it lets you spread a lot of money around your team, and maybe you can go for the better value play. But I would strongly look at who you're captain over the next few weeks if you're going without Salah. He's a genuine option this week against Arsenal. Even if you don't want to do that, there's Aston Villa coming up, there's Sheffield United coming up, there's West Ham coming up. All fixtures that Salah could be captained for. And if you're interested in kind of underlying numbers and stats and stuff, if you look anywhere that kind of has models with numbers, they all think that Salah's a great captain. Even this week against Arsenal, when a lot of people are saying that Arsenal have improved defensively, I still don't think the numbers back that up in terms of the underlying numbers. They've had some pretty good results. And I do think, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, Arsenal should be better than they were last season. But I haven't yet seen it, I don't think. I know a lot of Arsenal fans will disagree with me. That's absolutely fine. And with Saliba and Gabriel and David Luiz, when he's on form at least, they could be good defensively. But I think Salah's a good captain option this week. And like I said, even if you disregard that, there's plenty of fixtures coming up where he could be captain. So I think you really should, when you're wildcarding this week, factor in who you want to captain. Not who you could, because you could say, this guy's actually got a good fixture, I'll just captain him. Who is your ideal captain for the next couple of weeks? And then go from there. And I think you'll find Salah probably comes up more often than not. So he's in. And obviously that does limit me elsewhere. I still think James Rodriguez for 7.5 is a great option. Harvey Barnes needs to come into the conversation as well at this point. Yes, he has Man City in Game Week 3, but 2 nice fixtures after that. I think it's Villa and West Ham. His underlying numbers are good. They were good last year as well. I think his XGI is something like 0.5 or something like that per 90 minutes, which is really good. One of the problems with him in the past has been not getting to 90 minutes. If he can become an 80 to 90 minute man and improve his finishing a little bit, I do think that's one thing that lets his game down, then he could be a good option. But right now, I can't really look past James Rodriguez. I think I've got him for 7.5. He's actually gone up to 7.6 now. So if you didn't have him in your team, you're going to have to pay a bit more. But Everton just ticking along. I know people say it was just West Brom, but after Game Week 1, they were saying it was just Spurs. It could just be that Everton are actually not that bad now, and they have got that new midfield, which we thought would happen. And then Podence, because I'm making this after he rose in price, he's now 5.6 million. For a lot of your wildcard, and I'm sure you've already got him in your team at 5.5. He just looks like a great option. I'm not too worried about Semedo coming in. Yes, it'll push Traore up, but it's Podence versus Neto for that left side when they're playing 3-4-3. And I think Podence is first choice right now. And I think he looked great against Man City at times, especially in the second half. And I quite like the fact that a lot of people are going for him. They like it. They like how well he's done. But he hasn't really set the world alight. Okay, he's got 2 assists from 2 games, which is decent. But I think if he'd scored a few goals, then it'd be a massive, massive bandwagon. But instead, we've just seen that he looks like he can get some points, and we predict that he's going to with the fixtures, and that's why he's being brought in. So I kind of like that. It's not a case of he scored 4 goals, I'll bring him in. It's a case of he looked good, now I'll bring him in. So that's the midfield, that's the 4. Let's look at the strikers right now. So this is the forwards, and like I said at the start, I don't know if this is even the perfect team or what I would 100% do if I was wildcarding. It is extremely difficult. For example, the 4.5 million forward slot, would I want Brewster? Absolutely, but he hasn't left yet. Right, so I can't put him in because he takes up a Liverpool spot, and I've got 3 Liverpool players already, and that's hugely frustrating. If he does go to a Premier League team, he's going to be massively transferred in to create money elsewhere, or used heavily in wildcard teams as well. But if you go for triple Liverpool, you can't do that. So you've got to go for a non-playing forward like Davis. He has come on for 1 point, but he's not going to start week in, week out with the signings that they've made. And then the forward line, Werner and Calvert-Lewin. I could see a case in a few weeks where people maybe jump off these players. But right now, I'd want them in. Calvert-Lewin's in great form. 4 goals from 2. Okay, he's not going to keep that up, we know. I still think he's good value. Again, I said that pre-season, so this isn't a knee-jerk at all. And Werner, I think, is the biggest headache for anyone wildcarding this week, because I can see people making a case for Jimenez at 8.5. You spend 1 million less. He's got absolutely great fixtures. But what if Werner goes nuts against West Brom? It's such a good fixture. Not to say that Jimenez doesn't have good fixtures, because it's West Ham away, Fulham at home, which are decent as well. So you could save 1 million, spend that elsewhere. No issues with that at all. But I like Werner for this week, and I don't want to drop him from my team, which again is another reason why it's so difficult to wildcard this week. Because you either go for him against West Brom and book a transfer in if he blanks, or you go without him knowing that he could haul against West Brom, and that would be an absolute killer if you've wildcarded him out. We saw people last week wildcarding out Mitrovic and Son and all these kind of players, or at least transferring them out. And it's just that fear of doing it with Werner. You know, Martial, what if he suddenly goes mad against Brighton? It's only been 1 game for Man United and everyone's suddenly written them off again, even though they were the players that everybody was going for in Game Week 2. It's so difficult. This is the forward line I've gone for. It could be Jesus as well instead of Werner. So there are other options, and I'm not saying this is the perfect team and you should copy this team, but it's to give you an idea of how I would set it out. And what I'm going to do is, like I said, this has got 0.6 million in the bank. I'm going to show you an alternate team where you don't go for the triple Liverpool setup. Don't worry, I'm not taking a 20-point hit to get this team, but it does show you how few transfers I've made into what I would consider a good wildcard team from my actual team, which shows that for a lot of people, they probably don't need to have hit the button. To be honest, if you're wildcarding, you should have already hit the button. There's no point in waiting until the end of the week and then deciding, because you miss price rises and stuff. But it might just give you some confidence if you haven't hit the button yet, because what happens at the start of the season is so many people use it, it's very hard to ignore that noise. And I'm the same. I've considered using it, but maybe this will give you some kind of confidence in that you haven't hit that button and you're fine to go on. And it's not to say that anyone that's hit the button is bad. Like, I have seen some teams that I would wildcard. And I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't be surprised if I went back and actually looked at the weeks where I've wildcarded early in previous seasons. I've actually probably done okay. Like plenty of people wildcarding Game Week 2, 3, 4 and have an excellent season. Sometimes it can just be a weight off your mind. You start thinking a bit clearer. You don't always have this wildcard as a backup when you're making decisions. You've got to be more thorough in who you're choosing and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of a sideways talk, but yeah, I wouldn't be too worried. In this one, I've kept McCarthy in goal. That should be Martinez. But basically, the idea here is to show you, because Lamptey is like such a big thing now in FPL all of a sudden. I do think he looks great going forward. I still don't know how many clean sheets Brighton are actually going to keep. But for 4.5 million, it looks like a really, really good option. And sometimes you just have to have exciting players in your FPL team. And Lamptey is definitely one of them when you watch him play. So in this particular setup, the way I've got it, again, with a 4.5 keeper and Lamptey, obviously I've only got 2 Liverpool players, and I've got 7.6 million to spend on that third slot. So there's no one over 7 million that I'd want that I don't already own because I've got Calvert-Lewin in already. So really then you're looking at 6.5 or below. Chris Wood could be an option. Again, I like Adams for the next 2, but if I was wildcarding realistically, I probably wouldn't have him in. But Chris Wood could be good at 6.5. He also gives you a good way to go to Antonio around Game Week 8 when West Ham's fixtures get really good. And we know how good Antonio can be on his day. Ideally with this team, you'd want to raise another 0.9 million to get Jimenez. I'm not really seeing where I would do that in this team though. Like even if I drop Werner, that would be to Jimenez anyway. Otherwise, it's going without De Bruyne or Salah, or maybe going without Trent Alexander-Arnold and going down to Luka Dean instead. But they're all sacrifices I don't necessarily want to do. The other option, of course, is to drop Calvert-Lewin, maybe down to someone like Mitrovic, for example, and go Mitrovic and Jimenez instead of Wood and Calvert-Lewin. I actually think Calvert-Lewin and Wood could be better, but we know what Jimenez is like. He will keep ticking over points, so I can see why everyone's trying to fit him in their teams, and I certainly wouldn't put Podence in there thinking that he's going to cover Jimenez's points at all. But that's just an alternate way of doing it if you wanted to go for a cheaper defence and basically play 3-4-3 instead of 4-4-2. So that's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it useful as well. Like I said, you should just use this as an idea of what I would be thinking about. Not to say you should copy that team or anything like that, but good luck with all the wildcard tinkering if you have hit that button. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like. Hit that subscribe button as well if you haven't already, and the notification bell, of course. And if you want to try out Fan Team, like I said, you get 89 points to start, so a little bit of a way to catch up. There's a handy link in the description as below. So if you do want to sign up, make sure you do that before the deadline on Saturday. And as always, thanks to everyone that signed up to Patreon. Really do appreciate the support. Patreon.com/LetsTalkFPL. This is everybody that has signed up so far. And of course, if you want to get your name up on the wall, make sure you click that link in the description below. Check out what's on offer, including WhatsApp, Slack access, extra content. There'll be a Q&A on Friday over on Patreon. So if you want to check that out, make sure you do. I'll leave the video there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you tomorrow for another one.